Hi folks, Harry here, and today I'm going to be discussing with you my favourite books of 2020. So I think we can all agree that 2020 has not been a good year for anyone. But I have to say, this has been my most productive and most enjoyable reading year of my entire life. So this year I have read 124 books. That's like more than one every 3 days. That is absolutely incredible. I have read more books this year than any other year. I originally set my goal for 52 books this year, one every week, and I've absolutely smashed it. Quickly before this video starts, I just want to let you know that over half of you who watch my videos are not subscribed to the channel. So please make sure you smash that subscribe button and turn on post notifications to get notified every single time I upload a new video. So because 2020 is the year that my reading life really kicked off, I have discovered my new favourite books and my new least favourite books. And up until about a week ago, I had the same favourite book all the way through 2020. But then, about a week ago, I read Firestarter by Stephen King. So not only is this my favourite book that I read in 2020, but also my favourite book of all time. So this book follows a little girl called Charlie McGee who has pyrokinesis and her dad, Andy, who has telekinesis. And Charlie is being hunted down by this government organisation called The Shop, which also appears in multiple other Stephen King works, who is trying to harness her power for weaponry. The reason why this is my favourite book is I can't find a fault with it. You may remember in one of my recent videos, I'll link a card up here, that I think it becomes a problem when you can't identify any of a book's faults because you love it so much. And in that video, I spoke about some of my favourite books and things that I dislike about them. And up until that point, Misery was my favourite book, and I was able to identify a very clear fault with it. But with Firestarter, I couldn't really easily tell you any flaws. I'm desperately trying to think now of any problems that I have with this book, but I seriously can't. The pacing is absolutely fantastic. I read the last 450 pages of this book, which is, looking at the length, a very decent amount, in one sitting, and it does not feel like a 500, almost 600 page book. There is not a single wasted word in this book. Every single scene I absolutely adored, and at no point did I feel bored. I absolutely adored the father-daughter relationship between Andy and Charlie. This book perfectly exemplifies Stephen King's brilliant character work and his understanding of human emotion that he uses in his writing with such incredible mastery. And the ending of this book, oh my god, the ending of this book shattered me, but it is so well written and it is so good. It also has an extremely hateable villain, and Stephen King writes villains so well. And Rainbird has to be one of my favourite Stephen King villains that has ever existed. I absolutely love to hate him, and that is what I love in a villain. But yeah, Firestarter, not only my favourite book of 2020, but my favourite book of all time. So next up I'm going to talk about another Stephen King book, and that is 11/22/63. I forgot actually until I looked at my Goodreads that I read this year, because I read it in like February, which was so long ago. So this book is a sci-fi thriller, and it follows an English teacher called Jake Epping who lives in 2011, who finds a portal that takes him back to 1958 so he can prevent the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. But because the portal brings him back to 1958 and not 1963 when Kennedy was assassinated, he has to live out his life for 5 years before he's able to prevent this assassination. So he forms some amazing friendships and an amazing, I think the best written Stephen King romance, and it just makes such a compelling, such a fantastic, heartbreaking story. This book is 700 pages long, and I barely noticed while reading the length of this book. It's so fast-paced. I think the relationship between Jake and Sadie is not only the best romance that Stephen King has ever written, but also one of the best emotional connections between two people that Stephen King has ever written. It's just everything about this book is so fantastic. It is just truly a modern masterpiece, and I do think that everyone should read it and not be intimidated by the length, because you barely feel it passing by. Okay, so the last Stephen King book that I'm going to talk about, this is the last one, I swear. It is The Dark Tower, the 7th Dark Tower book. So this book is my favourite book in the entire series, but I love the entire series, so I'm going to talk about the series as a whole. So this series follows a gunslinger named Roland and his quartet who go on a journey to find a mysterious dark tower. The first sentence of the first book, The Gunslinger, is the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. And that basically sums up this entire series. The Dark Tower is definitely Stephen King's most thought out, most genius, most exciting story that he has ever written. This series is heartbreaking, it's entertaining, and it is so creative, it is so trippy, and is a brilliant example of how well Stephen King also just writes in other genres. This is adult dark fantasy. This series also spawned my favourite quote of all time, which spawned my YouTube username, the line, "Go then, there are other worlds than these," which first appeared in The Gunslinger and reoccurs throughout the series. I think the thing that stands out the most is my emotional connection to all of the characters throughout the series and their fates in this book, but also the ending. Some people really despise the ending, some people love it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so genius. Stephen King really, really made a good choice. And now, thinking back to The Gunslinger, it's been leading up to this ending all along, and I don't know how I didn't see it coming. It's just truly genius. This entire series is a work of art. This book is a bloody masterpiece. Kudos to Stephen King, because I don't know what I would do if this series wasn't in my life. So next up, I'm going to talk about a series as a whole that has meant so much to me in 2020, and that is the Shadowhunter Chronicles by Cassandra Clare. I have an entire shelf up there dedicated to this author, and I even have more of her books down here too, which are slightly out of frame. The Shadowhunter Chronicles has given me so much joy in 2020. I started City of Bones in May, and I finished The Lost Book of the White in November. And what a journey it's been. I absolutely love this series. I massively commend Cassandra Clare for everything that she has written. It's made me so happy. And knowing that I have to wait until March for Chain of Iron drives me insane, because all I want is Chain of Iron. I'm just so excited for it. So if you did not know, the Shadowhunter Chronicles is made up of multiple different series through history, and it follows a supernatural race of half-angel, half-humans called Shadowhunters, whose role in life is to protect the human world from demons. Every series has something so special about it, and I absolutely love it. So I couldn't just choose one book, but I have to say, Lord of Shadows is one of the best books I have ever read. This is definitely my favourite in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, but I didn't want to talk about just this one, so I'm talking about the whole Shadowhunter Chronicles in its entirety. I owe so much to this series. It's changed my life. It really has, and I don't know what I would do without it. So next up is a book that I don't actually talk about that often on my channel, and it is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. So even though this book is technically a trilogy, I count it as one book. So this book follows the lives of Tengo and Aomame as their lives intertwine in the strangest ways. This is a brilliant dystopian, and it is just a genius tale. It is so detail-packed, like all of Murakami's work. I absolutely adore it. It's a slow burner, but it is so good, and I have so many good things to say about it. My favourite in the trilogy has got to be the third one, because of how it all wrapped up. I thought it was absolutely beautiful, but just all of 1Q84 just makes me so happy, and I absolutely love it. This is one of the longest books I've ever read. It's 1,300 pages, but it is so worth the read. I love Murakami's writing style, and I wonder if it loses its Murakami-ness when it's translated from Japanese, because it is a translated work. I always think about this when I read translated works. Does it have the same energy of the original work? And I really hope that it does translate well, because the energy and the vibe that I get from this book and all of Murakami's writing is just absolutely remarkable. He is easily one of my favourite writers, and I can't wait to read more of him. Ow! So next up, I'm going to talk about a book that has brought me so much joy, and it is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. Oh my god, where do I start with this book? I have no idea. It's just so brilliant. So this book follows a teenage boy called Simon who is coming to terms with his sexuality. He has fallen in love with an unknown person online through email, and his emails get into the wrong hands. The person who finds his emails threatens to out him to the entire school that he is gay unless he helps him do something for him. This is easily one of the most heartfelt stories I have ever read. It is written with such mastery that makes you love every single one of the characters. But also I feel like someone like myself would particularly like this book because of how relatable it is. This book and just this story in general is so close to my heart, and I'm so glad that I read it. I read it during Pride Month in June. This book has changed my life because I think about it maybe once a day. It's just absolutely brilliant, and it is easily one of my favourite books of 2020. So next up I'm going to talk about The Passage by Justin Cronin. So this is the first book in a dystopian virus apocalyptic trilogy, and it is easily one of my favourite apocalyptic novels I have ever read in my life. This book is 900 pages long, but I barely felt it passing. As you may be able to tell from this list, I am definitely a sucker for fast-paced stories. So I read this book because my English teacher recommended it to me, and for Christmas I got the rest of the trilogy, and I'm so happy about it, and I'm so excited to carry on with this trilogy, because I think there's so many ways that this story could go, and I'm really interested to see where Justin Cronin took it. This book is also just scarily relevant during these difficult times, and it only makes it even more harrowing. It's also just written so bloody well, and I absolutely adored it. This is one of my favourite books I have ever read. It's just truly fantastic. So now I'm going to talk about the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. Again, I love all of this series, so I couldn't just pinpoint one book to choose, so I'm just talking about this series as a whole. So this series follows a teenage girl called Juliet who has the power to kill people just by touching them. She is taken captive by the Re-establishment, which is a controlling government, and is completely deprived of any interaction with anyone. The main reason why I love this series so much is the writing style. It is so poetic, it is so beautiful, and I absolutely love it. This book is so unique to any other book that I have ever read in my life, and there is one page that exemplifies this perfectly. This is the page that I'm talking about. There are so many good things I could say about this series. I think this first book is my least favourite. I think that each book gets better and better, but this series as a whole is just so fantastic. It's really unique considering that this came out in the time that YA dystopians were booming. And the main thing that I like about this is the writing. It's so compelling and is so unique compared to anything I've ever read before. So I can't make a favourites of 2020 video without talking about Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. This is the biggest book on this list, coming in at 1,400 pages. It is so magical. So this book follows a man named Jean Valjean who has broken his parole. Because of this, he's hunted down by Police Inspector Javert literally until the end of his life. But this book is so much more than that. It is a tale of love, grief, crime, friendship, family. It's just everything that I love about books is in this book. So as I assume most people did, this book came to my attention via the musical and the movie. And out of those, which one do you think is the best? The book is. Because this book is 1,400 pages long, you really get to know every single one of the characters. The book is just so much more fleshed out, and it is truly one of the best things I've ever read. Les Miserables, just as a story, is one of the most magical things I've ever come across. I've loved it ever since I was a toddler growing up with the soundtrack of the musical. So this story is so close to my heart, and it is so nostalgic. I love everything about Les Mis. It's just truly fantastic. I love it so much, and I could not make a favourite books 2020 list without including Les Mis on it. It is just brilliant. I absolutely loved it. So lastly, I'm going to talk about another series, and that is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J Maas. So this series follows an assassin named Selena Sardovian. Oh my god, that aged badly. That's what this series used to be about, and then Heir of Fire came along and it's like, psych, haha, we're gonna do something completely different now. But I started this series during the summer reading rush of 2020, and since then I've just been trashed for Throne of Glass. I love it so much. I have to say, this series is quite problematic at times, But I think if you look past that, this series is so well written. There is just so much to point out that is just truly fantastic. So I very recently finished Queen of Shadows, and I actually tabbed it up, which I don't do with many books. I only do that when I feel like there's many things in a book to specifically point out that I want to refer back to. And considering how many tabs there are in this book, there is so much in this book specifically that I would like to go back to and talk about at some point in the future. Not going to talk about them here because it's spoiler free and this is the 4th book in a series, but I have to thank this series for so much. It's just really made an impact on my reading taste. But yeah, this series is just so magical. It is so fantastic, so genius, and I've been talking for half an hour, so I'm just gonna stop talking about Throne of Glass now. So those are my favourite books of 2020. Sorry if it was a very long video, but let me know what your favourite book that you read this year is in the comments below, because I would really, really like to know. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big fat thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to my channel for more bookish content from me. All of my social media links are in the description below, and I will see you next time with another video. Goodbye.